In 2021, the NBA embraces rap music and hip-hop culture in ways that were unfathomable less than 30 years ago. Rappers headline all-star weekends and perform during halftime shows throughout the regular season and playoffs. They populate the sidelines and have significant friendships with many of the players and even members of some coaching staffs. Rappers are ambassadors, have had co-ownerships, and more business partnerships with the league. But it took the league a while to come to terms with the inevitable. The inevitable being that a league that is 70% black would eventually be unable to stifle the influence of hip-hop. Or perhaps they realized how lucrative embracing hip-hop could be to the overall brand of the sport, and how rap could be used as a gateway to the youth. It'd be naive to think that dollar signs didn't fuel their shift in opinion towards the genre. Initially, it was the fear of hip-hop damaging the reputation of the league that created distance. You see, back in the early 80s, hip-hop was a lot more innocent. By the time Kurtis Blow released the song Basketball in '84, it was synonymous with arenas during timeouts and halftimes. Hip-hop would continue to grow almost parallel to the NBA in ways in which the public saw both the league and the genre become more loud, popular, edgy, fashionable, and overall more entertaining. By the early 90s, the two cultures began to merge in more significant ways. Shaq would take the crown as the first player to hit the Billboard charts with I Know I Got Skillz in '93. Shorts got longer, players were able to flex more of who they really were. So naturally, hip-hop ties and influences would be on display through fashion, which had one of the biggest cultural contributions of all time thanks to Jordans, the tats, braids, even in the trash talk which became more abundant, and many articles would tie that to the influence of rap music. More players would begin to try their hand at making their own music, and this would not be well received by the league commissioner at the time, David Stern. For an example of this, check out my video on Allen Iverson's short-lived rap career. Athletes wanted to be rappers, and rappers were trying to be athletes, and were also one of the main reasons for jersey sales surging with the throwback trend. The NBA would make a lot of money because of this, and it even sparked throwback nights where entire teams got the privilege of wearing their franchise's retro jerseys. Things would slowly start to become a little less sweet by the late 90s and early 2000s due to certain league benefactors and basically old heads not really approving of hip-hop or its representation in the National Basketball Association. David Stern would eventually make a push to stop any athlete from releasing music so Iverson wouldn't be singled out. This is why the world never got Kobe's album Visions, which featured 50 Cent, Nas, and even Destiny's Child. Well, I mean, the album did eventually get leaked, but it took until literally this year for that to happen. Dressing in ways that resemble most rappers was frowned upon by older fans of the sport, and they deemed it more of a representation of thug and gang culture. Phil Jackson himself is on record saying that the players have been dressing in prison garb for the last 5 or 6 years. All the stuff that goes on, it's like gangster and thuggery stuff. Many players will begin amassing fines between the years 2000 and 2005 due to how oversized their clothes were. But eventually the league had seen enough. In 2004, the Washington Post reported that while attending a dinner in Serbia, the US Olympic team looked embarrassingly unkempt in comparison to the Serbian team, who donned matching sports jackets. US players wore massive clothing and jewelry. Coach Larry Brown remarked that he was so embarrassed by the display that he considered sending the worst-dressed players back to the hotel. This and more backlash that followed the malice at the palace would culminate into the now infamous dress code policy of 2005 in an attempt to disassociate the league from a thug-like image. No visible chains, no shades, no hats, no do-rags, or headphones, pretty much just business casual. The dress code received immense backlash from a lot of players and media personalities deeming it racist and an attack on hip-hop culture. Jason Richardson would speak on it and have this to say. One thing to me that was kind of racist was you can't wear chains outside your clothing. I don't understand what that has to do with being business approachable. You wear a suit, you still could be a crook. You see all what happened with Imran and Martha Stewart. Just because you dress a certain way doesn't mean that you're that way. Hey, a guy could come in with baggy jeans, a do-rag, and have a PhD, and a person comes in with a suit and could be a 3-time felon. Steven Jackson would state that the league was afraid of its players becoming too hip-hop. But not everyone was against the policy. Some players would even validate it. And some black members of the media would write columns in support of the code. Back in 2005, Jason Whitlock, of course, was one of those columnists and would have the following to say. Too many young black professional athletes have closely aligned themselves with hip-hop culture, which in reality is nothing more than prison culture. Now, validation like this, especially coming from black people, gave the NBA more fuel to stand firm with their decision not being racially biased. The media that favored the policy related it to how most people have to dress business casual at their jobs, stating that it wasn't an attack on black culture, but instead an attack on gangsta and thug culture. Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki were often tokened as white players who have to follow the policy. If you haven't already, I'd suggest reading After Our Test, The NBA and the Assault on Blackness, for more testimonies from players and commentators from around that time. Tension was at an all-time high, and I think this book captures the worst of it. But as time went on, players would move forward with this policy because it was either that or get fines and suspensions. But hip-hop culture would still maintain a heavy influence on things, if not heavier than ever before, because fashion began to change. Jay-Z would promote more sophisticated fashion, clothes would get less baggy, and overall the dress code would become more relaxed once Stern stepped down as commissioner. And now as we head into the late 2000s, clothes would become more of what we see now. Style was a little bit more fitted. There were guys like Kanye who had the whole backpack rap swag and all that stuff. So things would eventually kind of merge into what the league was insisting upon in removing all the baggy clothing and gaudy jewelry and things like that. And many people actually credit the dress code to impacting hip-hop, but that's a debate for another day. It could have been the other way around, who knows? So with the way things are now, it's almost like there was never any friction between the NBA and the rap game. But league execs still chime in whenever they aren't comfortable with something, like the Warriors being criticized for singing Coco by OT Genesis in 2014. Due to the subject matter being drug-related, they wanted nothing to do with it. But with Drake hosting award shows for them, there's really nothing the NBA can really do to separate themselves from rap now, even if they wanted to. So with that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button if you feel like it, leaving a like would also be dope too. We're gonna crank out content more consistently here, so every like and comment definitely helps. And with that being said, I'm out.